This happened yesterday, and I can't stop thinking about what would have happened if I couldn't get away. I was at the mall with my 2 little cousins, under 6 years old, and a classmate, while my mother was at an appointment. After an hour, my classmate went home, and I was left alone with my little cousins. I ended up going with them to a playground inside the mall, and I watched my cousins while they played. I started to get paranoid, thinking someone was going to take them, so I became very aware of my surroundings. After about 20 minutes, we decided to leave the park and go upstairs on the escalators. An old man was coming down the stairs. He looked at me and my cousins and went back up. I realized he was looking at us, and I had a really bad gut feeling, so I immediately pulled my cousins closer to me. As I couldn't see the man anymore, I calmed myself down and took my cousins to a mini carousel on the floor we were. I live in a small town, so it's not very common for the mall to be full, especially in the pandemic, so there was no one on or around the carousel. After about 2 minutes, as I took my younger cousins off the carousel, and as I turned around, I saw the man right behind my back, just looking at us. I didn't know for how long he was just standing there, but at that moment, I was already terrified, and I took my cousins and left. The corridors have 2 sides, divided by empty spaces that give a view to the lower floor with some passages between them, so that you can pass to the other side of the corridor. I went to the left, and the man went to the right. My first thought was to go inside a store, so I told my cousins that we were going to see some dresses for them. As I was telling them this, that fucker goes through one of those passages and goes to my side of the corridor right behind me. I keep my plan to enter the store. It could be that he didn't enter the store, and if he did, I could ask an employee for help. But when I enter, the man enters behind me. I legit almost shit my pants. I went with my cousins to near the cash registers where there were more people, and the man stood near the entrance. He didn't pick up or look at any clothes. He just looked around the store, I assume maybe trying to find me. At this point, I had completely abandoned my previous plan of asking an employee for help, and when the man turned his back to go where I was, by the opposite path, I told my cousins we were going for a run and left the store, running with them to the elevators. We managed to go downstairs, but the remaining time we spent in the mall, I was very restless. My city has a history of human trafficking, so I think when the man saw me alone with my cousins, he assumed that we were easy targets, or I could just be being paranoid. This was my first incident of ever being followed, harassed, stalked, whatever you want to call it. I made it nearly 30 years on this earth. I suppose something like this had to happen sometime. It's probably relevant to the story to start off with the fact that I'm female, and also that I'm a huge fan of this band called Ghost. If you don't know who they are, they're a metal band from Sweden, and their most hardcore fans are really hardcore, as you'll see. Anyway, I have this Ghost shirt that is a bootleg copy of an extremely rare shirt, and I honestly love it. When I bought it, it wound up being way too small to wear, but since I dropped a bunch of weight recently, yay anxiety, I celebrated by putting it on and making a trip to the mall, mostly to pick up a new album I wanted. So I'm just browsing through the mall's music store, not particularly finding what I wanted, but just seeing if they had any other cool shit, when this dude, I don't know, sort of makes his way towards me and also starts to browse. I don't pay him any mind. I figured he was just a fellow metal fan, given his Gojira shirt. He was actually kind of good looking, so I didn't get the creep vibe at all. I'm flipping through the secondhand CDs when I hear this dude start talking.
You like Ghost?
It sort of took me a second to realize that he was talking to me. I space out a lot and honestly hate small talk. Like, it makes me want to lay down in traffic. So it caught me off guard, and I almost pretended not to hear him. But he said it again. I guess I couldn't ignore him, and to be honest, a lot of random metalheads you meet turn out to be pretty cool. Yeah, I said, trying to sound nothing more than polite, and also making sure he saw my wedding ring. They're my favorite. It sort of made me feel uncomfortable when he didn't smile and start going, "Yeah man, I saw them back when," or some shit like that. He just looked at me like I'd said fuck your mother. Now this is weird feeling starts kicking in, and I just go back to pretending to be interested in a CD. He didn't take the hint because the next thing out of his mouth was,
"That shirt is a bootleg. It's bootlegged."
I look back at him with a really bitchy expression, like, leave me alone, man. All I said was, "Yeah, it is," and decided to get the fuck out of Dodge before I had to listen to some pretentious metal elitist rant. Dude just keeps staring at me with that shitty expression until I'm out of the store, and I think that's the end of it. I decide to check out Hot Topic. Shut up, I know. To see if they had any behemoth shirts, and by this point, I had totally forgotten about Shirt Man. I'm just sort of picking through the shirts and feeling more than a little pissed off at the lack of actual metal tees and the excess of tiny bopper shit like Bieber or whatever. And then I turn around, and there's the fucking guy again. It sort of startled me to see him there, and for a split second, I thought that it was just a coincidence. Maybe he was trying to find his kid or whatever, but that all went to shit when he looks at me, looking pissed off this time, and says,
"That fucking shirt is a bootleg. Do you know how disrespectful that is?"
I'm legitimately not the nicest person in the world if you push my buttons, so I match his pissy expression and tell him, "Look man, I don't give two shits if it's bootlegged or not. It's a badass shirt and I'll wear whatever I want. Excuse me." And I shoved past him as rudely as possible, told the cashier, who I knew from being there a lot, that I'd be back in like an hour to pay for the shit that she had behind the counter, and left. This time I'm angry as fuck, and I'm texting both my husband and my dad at this point about this motherfucker, so at least they know where I was and what was going down. After I blew my stack, I felt better, and again, brushed this douche off. The last thing on my day at the mall agenda was to get my nails done, so I go to the salon, and as I'm getting my acrylics put on, I look out of the side of the salon. It's like a big wall of windows, so you can see out into the mall. And holy shit, there's this motherfucker, once again, looking mad as hell. What the fuck is his problem? I thought to myself. The rational side of my brain kept trying to tell me that maybe he's having a shitty day, and I was a convenient target or whatever, and that maybe his girl is getting her nails done too. This place was packed. Another half hour or so goes by, and this fucker hasn't budged an inch. Shit, I don't even know if he blinked. I was really fucking freaked out by now. And with the hand that wasn't getting manicured, I'm frantically texting my husband, dad, and older brother, saying, "Look, whichever one of you is closest to the mall, get here now." My dad lives like 5 minutes up the road from the mall, and he's always armed. So he says, "Don't worry, baby, I'm on my way," which made me feel a lot better, and I'm so glad I decided to text my dad, because shit really got wild once I walked out of the nail place. No sooner do I set one fucking foot out of the salon, this creep comes rushing right the fuck up to me, red-faced and literally screaming,
"Your shirt is bootlegged. It's fucking bootlegged. You don't give a shit about Ghost. You disrespect them all."
And he keeps going on and on and on, calling me every name in the fucking book. I am honestly pretty tough, but when you've got a guy who has a foot and at least 50 pounds on you, it's hard not to be scared. Shirt Guy is towering the fuck over me, and by this point, I'm crying. I can't believe no one ever called mall security or the cops or whatever, but I think they assumed he was like my asshole boyfriend or something. Not a great excuse, but that's all I could figure. My dad picked the perfect time to show up because this dude was literally a second away from fucking grabbing me or hitting me or something. And I gotta be honest, I was about ready to literally piss my pants. My dad is an enormous guy, former Navy, literally built like a tank with a Desert Eagle on his hip. That's when I hear him yell,
"You got a fucking problem, buddy?"
with his hands on that big-ass gun. I run like a scared little baby behind my dad, and this fucker actually tries to yell at my dad, but once he saw that fucking gun, he scampered. My dad rode me in his truck over to my car and then followed me back home just to make sure that asshole didn't follow me. And he stayed with me until my husband got home. Thank the fucking Lord, I'm a daddy's girl. Asshole who takes other people's shirt way too personally, I don't ever want to meet you again. I was around 13 years old and at the shopping center with my parents. I wanted to go off on my own and wander around by myself for a while, and my parents agreed. After a little while, I was stopped by a woman in casual clothes. She told me that she was an undercover cop and I was suspected of shoplifting. Because I was young, I was terrified. I didn't ask her for ID or anything like that. I didn't know I could question authority. She asked to look through my bag, and I let her, insisting I hadn't stolen anything. She asked me how old I was, who I was there with. Then she asked me something that still sends chills down my spine.
Are your parents expecting you to go home with them tonight?
I told her of course they were. Why wouldn't they be? She then insisted that I had to follow her to go and figure out this shoplifting thing. I went. She was leading me towards the exit. By the grace of God, before we got there, we bumped into my dad. He asked what was going on, and I told him. As I was explaining the situation, the woman got on her phone and was talking to someone, saying things like,
"Oh, this isn't the right girl?"
Then hangs up and says,
"Sorry, wrong person,"
and abruptly walks off. My dad and I stood there, dumbfounded. When my mom found out about the situation, she was really unimpressed by the way the undercover cop handled the situation. She took me to center management the next day and complained to them about how I was treated by their undercover cop. When the woman answers, "We don't employ undercover cops in this center." I have no idea what that woman had planned for me, but I thank my lucky stars every day that we ran into my dad.